bishop d7. I guess what it likes is that we do get a stable Maratzi type structure, and I probably will return to c3. We can play rook c1. Honestly, I would have preferred to play g4, g2 in this position. Right. It will not be allowed, but it doesn't seem tremendously bad for black. Honestly, like b5. I guess the point is we can g5 is strong here. It looks like it should be playable for black, but I can see why it might be pleasant for white as well.
And if we see Nepo's body language,
my goodness. Nepo has now realized that he was supposed to include knight b3 first, prior to g4, and I'm sure that was a position he wanted. He wanted knight b3, queen d8, g4. Play g4, rook c8, knight b3, and it's a finger failure. And I think it's something the top grandmasters are becoming more conditioned to blunder. They have so much prep. Peter, sometimes they get the lines mixed up by one.
Yeah, okay, this explains why g4 was played prior to knight b3. It does not explain g5.
That is true.
He still had bailouts available. The position prior to him playing g4, g5 was unpleasant, but he absolutely still had bailouts available. For instance, the engine suggests it's a bit of a peculiar looking move, queen g5. But what it does is it kind of stops knight d7 because the e7 pawn will be bishop takes g4 now appeared on my screen, so I'm scared. Right. But my point is I kind of want to play queen a5, and once again I want to play those endgames. They don't seem like fun, but they're much to be preferred if the alternative is getting mated. Right. And currently there's a suggestion that even this piece sacrifice, which frankly does not lead to mate, it's just a positional piece sacrifice, is quite playable for black because after, let's say, rook e2, the engine goes queen a3 and says, please stop my a5, a4 ideas.
My king is safe enough for now.
No, but this is a mess. Right. White has his own counterplay on the king side. You can try playing queen d7, takes e7, takes d6. Who knows what this is? Right. Compared to the game, like this is a very playable position. And if bishop takes g4 doesn't happen, and let's say you play h6, I play queen a5, it's an endgame you can play. Takes, the rook probably goes to b4, we return the knight to b3, we start chasing. It's not that bad.
It's not losing. Wow. But I just saw that, I feel for Jan. I just saw his, like, something in this
horrible,
tournament is just...
This one is ending.
This game is racing to a draw.
This is Ding Liren.
They're just repeating with king h1.
Oh my gosh. I see Prague did win his pawn back.
And
Ding did not even try to play that position that we were discussing for a win. Okay. Decided to just immediately stop, and there you have it.
So rook c1, we left it these parts, queen b8, and he went queen b5.
He did play queen b5, which is still a move you can argue is a move to far advantage. If we could just briefly go back to this.
Over to you, yes.
Yeah, queen b5 is once again like no fun allowed for black. But the thing is, first of all, rook e5 is very, very precise. It's by far the cleanest option black has here. And secondly, you can still play bishop d3, stopping black from playing d4, d3. And let's say rook takes e5, you can play rook c7. And yes, it's probably a draw, some position like this, but you can definitely imagine, like, if you play a5 and I get to play bishop c4, and I somehow get to force you to play rook f5 here. This might be quite unpleasant.
Right.
Instead of all that, Ding just played bishop c4, which is basically a draw offer, because after d3, d4 rook e1 is such a threat that you have to do this, and then everything comes off.
Gotcha.
And as you have seen, they shook hands. Prague, I guess it's a successful outing. You played a risky opening, and you held more or less by showing your prep there.
Right.
But on the other hand, when you play this line, you are maybe hoping to have some fun, and not much fun was had. But a kind of a half a day off with the black pieces against the world champion is not a bad outcome.
Not a bad outcome.
Not a bad outcome at all.
At all. Thank you, Peter. Nasi, where shall we go?
Well, let's check Wesley's game against Alireza, the tournament leaders.
Again, when we left it, we were in a Grunfeld where we kind of gave Wesley the upper hand in terms of coming out of the opening and getting a position he wanted.
He has a big time advantage as well. Almost a full hour.
Whoa, that is a big...
But not a lot on the board.
Okay, so
very levelish on the board.
We left it at these parts, the move bishop b5, certainly a normal developing move, no question about it. We were more inclined towards king b2 and bishop to d3. Bishop b5, knight to f6.
Temporary sacrifice, knight e4 is coming.
a6. I'm pausing just because in all of these variations, you end up calculating the consequences of a c6, right? Because there's always you get your pawn down there. You want to make sure that
rook f8 was absolutely playable, but it was allowing c6, b takes c6, and let's say bishop a6.
Right.
And I suspect you still have enough counterplay against the white queen side to be completely fine. But you can definitely imagine, like, if white gets to, I don't know, castle play, rook fc1, and then knight d4, and completely stabilize. You could be a bit worse because of the broken up structure on the queen side.
The split pawns. That was why we saw a6. Bishop back to c4, knight to c5.
Yeah, and here Wesley, I think, thought for quite a bit and played the move b3, b4, which I think allows more or less immediate draw here if black... I think knight takes e3 is completely fine, but a6, a5 is even cleaner, I think.
a6, a5.
Yeah, just go a6, a5 here.
This is even cleaner, you say?
Because you just break everything up and then you collect it over the next, I don't know, 3 to 5 moves. And I don't see white has any way of preserving the structure. How would you like to proceed?
I'm saying tactically, I see a variation that might begin c6. If you did this, more or less, you might be playing into my hands.
No, I'm pretty sure we don't want that. I'm pretty sure the idea is to play AB.
Right.
Let's try to calculate it together. Yeah, rook a8.
Right.
CB.
Right.
You know what? Maybe rook b8. I wanted to go rook a1, knight c3, and try to calculate that to a draw.
Exactly.
But
I think it is.
Maybe it is. But also, am I worse after rook b8?
That I wasn't sure about either.
I think that is also basically an immediate draw.
Because
bishop d5, knight c3, you might be worse.
Bishop d5, knight c3,
and bishop e4.
And bishop e4.
No, I mean, if I want to be really boring, I can play bishop 6, bishop e4, and collect the pawn on b7, right?
And this is boring as.
And see, before rook b7, you lose it in 2 moves.
Ah, darn it!
It just disappears off the board. Yeah. And b5, rook c7, you might actually lose.
Be worse.
So
I mean, darn it. Okay.
So a5 kind of ends. I think
the
all
discussions
chances over and there's a very cute line there I want to show you.
Please.
Castles.
Yes.
Knight takes c3 is the point.
Yes.
ba.
Yes.
Probably many things equalize here, but the one I just spotted on my screen is rook fc8.
Okay.
Rook fc1. You probably know what I want to do here now, right?
Not obviously.
Rook c5. Rook c3.
b4.
b5.
Oh.
Such a beautiful move to make onto the board, right?
Walking into an en passant. No, that's pinned. No, that's pinned. And
ending up with a very, very level position.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so a6, by the way, that is not, for me, the most intuitively obvious move. I didn't actually see the refutation to
I think it's still fine. Yeah, I think he's intending to play something like knight d4 for now.
Right.
And hope maybe he gets to play f3, king d2, and then he will be quite happy.
Then he's interested in the pawn.
But black will probably find a way.
A6, A5 is a very cute, actually, it's not just cute. I mean, I think it's a very, very important point at this
the best way to equalize for black without any trouble. There's some updates in Gucker's game.
I heard a woo.
Yeah, there's a bit of a woo over there. Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the woo.
And I think this is what Nazi was, because this just appeared on the board. This tactic wasn't available earlier, and the kind of a setup that I was describing did arrive on the board after bishop b7. Bishop d4 happened. Rook c8, h3. Gukesh here doesn't even try to play a4, a5. He's saying I will be trying to play on the king side. Bishop d7, queen e1, bishop c6, rook d1, rook e8, knight g3. And in this position, the engine says knight f5 really does not need to be addressed necessarily. You can go even something like knight fd7, removing a piece from the king side, let's say knight f5, bishop f8. It seems to suggest that eventually g7, g6 will drive it away, and this is such a sturdy setup that all of these threatening-looking pieces do not actually create many threats. But MVL understandably decided, why am I allowing knight f5 altogether? Very unusual little bit of a tactic.
Woo!
It doesn't do very much, it's just like it's a cute move, right? You don't see this particular tactical motif very often. We're winning a pawn on the very, very outskirts of town there on a6, using the fact that the d6 pawn is pinned. And interestingly, as the best reply in this position, or definitely one of the best replies, the engine suggests giving up this queen for positional compensation.
A bishop?
With the intention of, after knight d3, just playing quietly with h7, h5, trying to get at the a4 pawn.
It's queen and pawn against rook and the bishop.
Yeah, normally this would be completely winning for white.
Of course.
But white is just so discoordinated that you probably end up losing some important real estate, to such an extent that the current best suggestion on my board is that
you get
an exchange is more important than the e4 pawn. E4, yeah. Or the other way around.
Right.
Preserving this is more important than keeping your rook on f1.
So here,
and honestly, this looks like it might be okay for black, right?
2 rooks for a queen and a pawn. Yeah.
Still a very sharp position, but with the bishop pair and the kind of very unsafe king on g1, with the structure in front of it being
I have another
destroyed.
update. I think Notterbeck just played a really bad move.
Uh-oh.
And I'm trying to figure out why. It's just a question mark.
Yeah. It just looks ugly, frankly.
It does.
I don't think...
So c5 didn't happen.
Yeah, it doesn't have a tactical refutation. It's just not a move you want to make, and I'm kind of struggling to even explain it in purely human terms.
When I was in my English career, I would just loved having control over the e4 and d5 squares, and positions like these where I could plant a knight on e4 and plant a knight on g5, I just relished. I just thought I was frankly close to winning, if not strategically winning. In this particular case, I might be very, very tempted to play a move like e3 in order to open up the e file, so that when I do get a land, a knight on d5.
I'll present a counter argument.
Please.
Let's go back prior to black playing f4. The best move in this position, and the move I guess Notterbeck did not want to make because he wants to have quote-unquote fun, is queen g7.
Right, clear.
You play queen g7, you specifically, I think, recapture with the knight if the queens get traded, so that you have knight e6 after knight d5.
Okay.
And you hope you will get to play knight d7, and if all of your pieces come out, really you haven't done that much damage to your position, frankly.
Right.
I think it very much hinges on the question how much better... No, knight d5, knight d7, knight 6 is completely fine. c5 here. I think the question is, after c5, which probably forces d takes c5 in my eye, knight e5, and then some move. Are we much better with white? Are we a little bit... I mean, we probably are a little...
much better. But
this is still sort of playable.
By the way, the vultures, as we say, are circling as they sense that blood on the board in the game between Fabi and Ian, as you see the tournament...
Ali Reza's there in his flared jacket.
Frozen.
Staring disapprovingly at the ruins of the white position. Yeah.
Or approvingly, one way or...
No, I think he
doesn't want Fabi to win.
Yeah, he would like Fabi to be...
By the way,
50%.
Jan did just get up from the board, and he just looked completely
Jan did what I expected him to do, I think, in human terms. This is the way to create problems.
By the way, I mean... in my day, we had players at the board. Rafiq Faganyan, he knew how to suffer at the board. He just had this intent. Like he won a great number of games. Don't get me wrong. Rafiq was a dangerous player. But when he made a bad move, he really expressively let you know he was not a happy camper. Jan falls into that.
And just briefly, before we, I think, abandoned this game for a while, because I think Fabi is in control, this wouldn't have been, like, it's going to be bad even if the rook goes back.
Right.
But the biggest issue is queen c4. Unfortunately for white, the attack doesn't stop.
Ouch.
Queen c4, if you have to play b3 and allow queen c5, your queen side will just collapse. This is just completely unsupportable. The bishop will go away, and the 75 will land, and your entire queen side will disappear off the board. So you end up having to take on e6. And then we have a very similar story to what we were discussing earlier, queen d5. FE6 is winning, but I think the simplest is just to do this. And now probably one precise move somewhere. Like the engine even includes moves like b6 or b5, I guess, because the counterplay, once we play something like rook
you
e2,
have to play rook
the
c1.
counterplay will be rook c1, rook c7.
Right.
So we even spend the tempo preparing for it. And then we go rook somewhere and start collecting. And yeah, this looks completely lost.
But queen c4, yeah, by the way, it's a kind of a funny echo. A moment ago, we were looking at that position of Fabi's, and I was saying it reminded me of the rook c3, rook takes a3 story. Mm-hmm. Where is the game? There it is. Where you sacrifice and you keep. Mm-hmm. You keep sacrificing.
You keep sacrificing, but here
queen
it doesn't
c4
look like mate,
is just killer.
Queen c4 is very strong, yeah.
The queen c4.
I have to play b3 only move and...
Well, yeah, we're just looking at 96. And
no, I think b3 actually loses faster than 96.
Really?
If you want to continue the game, you have to go 96 and play that really lost-looking rook ending, yeah.
Well, even if I had a pawn on f3, I would be feeling
bad. This looks bad with
feeling devastated. But without the pawn on f3, it's black has the attack and the material in the pocket. Sorry, we were on a game a moment ago that we
were looking at Anish's game. Yeah,
we didn't quite finish, and that was this game of Anish and f5, f4. Imagining that you had a student and you were trying to explain to the student why they shouldn't be playing the f5, f4 move, you would start from the idea of, okay, you want to attack white, right? Good. How many pieces are you attacking with? Well, maybe your knight on b8, rook on a8 belong into the game, which brings us back to what Peter was saying. The normal move would be queen g7, but is it the tournament dictating?
I don't know.
That he has to play for a win?
You called it right, that Notterbeck's just on tilt and just taking way too many risks.
He had one really, really bad game, but his play outside of that, not even a bad game, a bad ending to the game.
Right.
His first 90% of that game was stellar, actually.
Okay.
Right.
So I
We're
think,
talking about his game with Fabiano.
Again, the game that he ended up losing to Fabio. And what I think about this is, he even said this in one of the interviews. I think he was giving an interview after one of the rounds, and he said, I want to play interesting openings, I want to play fighting chess, and I would like to win a game, because he also has not won a game in Bucharest. That's his first appearance on the full tour.
Right.
And he is so far winless in the classical portion.
Right.
And sometimes, and I've been in those spots in my career where like it seems like you just kind of end up making draw after draw after draw, and it gets to you at some point.
Right.
And you know it's unhelpful, you know you should continue playing objectively, but it does start informing your decisions a great deal.
Exactly. I remember when I was breaking into the arena as a 20-year-old. Now they break into the arena as a 14-year-old, but when I was 20, I was trying to break into the arena, trying to earn my spurs, trying to get invitations. And specifically, I knew that the organizers wanted fighting chess. So to get my invitation, you had to win games, and for Nuremberg, for sure, he's in his Grand Chess Tour, his maiden voyage, if you will. He wants to make a great impression. He'd love to get invited back, and so
I think he looks
sometimes
very
you just
nervous
play
right
too
now.
hard,
Yeah.
right? You lose a little bit the objectivity,
Yes.
Peter. Yeah.
And today, honestly, is the first time I've seen this, because I think all of his previous play in this tournament was very much to his credit, and he never lost that feeling of, these are the best moves, I will be making them, I am not very influenced by my, the standings in the tournament, the standings in the tour, those things will come. And, I don't want to particularly give advice to Nuremberg, because I think he's a very level-headed young man. Everything I've heard about him and everything I've heard in conversations with him, frankly, suggests to me he does not need my advice whatsoever. Yeah. But if I were to give him advice, I would say, you do not need, the kind of a player he is, worrying about invites is just unnecessary. He's going to get invited everywhere anyway because he's
so
a very exciting young player rated 2760.
Hello.
So just don't. It's not that. It's in his case in particular. You really don't have that feeling of job security disappearing.
Right.
He's going to be a fixture in the elite circuit for 10 years to come. Maybe 15.
Totally.
So I think it's more just he badly wants to win a game.
Right.
I think he knows he is not going to struggle for strong tournaments and for invites to strong tournaments. Right. It's just that it's getting to him that win remains elusive. But F5, F4, it's just not a move I've seen him make.
No.
I just don't understand how you get to that conclusion. What is the thought process that leads you to the decision to do this to your position?
Right.
How is this a good idea?
And he's beginning to feel the suffering. I mean, again, I just boldly point out the obvious, the knight on B8. If the knight is on C5, just put the knight on C5. You got the position with the knight on C5, and the two moves you start looking at are E5, E4, F5, F4. Pardon me, the third move you start looking at is fully developing your pieces and then going for the attack. Going for the attack when your pieces are on the first rank, prescription for disaster. And
also just very concretely, something that you've been in similar positions you've been talking about, Yasser.
Yeah.
We can even start with knight G5.
Exactly.
I like your E3, by the way.
Sure.
The reply to F4 by trying to open something in the center and use the fact that black is undeveloped is very strong.
Right.
But name a move in this position.
Black doesn't have queen G7 anymore, right?
Queen G7 will now lose to takes knight D5 and the pawn on C7 actually falls.
You don't have knight E6 anymore.
Exactly.
We've ruled out all of your responses to this. So, well, I mean, you have knight E8, but it looks lost. Right. It just looks horrible. If you don't have knight queen G7, what exactly?
I mean, I don't know. Your point is well taken. I can't move my queen in order to. I can't vacate the D7 square.
And if the queen is rooted to the D7 square, then those two pieces are also not going to come back.
So
E6 seems like the only logical move at this point.
I mean, I've run
out of moves, right?
I've run out of moves, and maybe on a good day I'll tell you. Well, your knight's stuck.
And I'm starting to be extremely interested in the question whether C5 is just winning by force on this.
And
which maybe it's not, but
I'm not going to argue against it. I mean, sometimes
here I want to go CD6.
Of course.
And if you go C6 and you think you've stabilized, I want to go knight D5 and
knight D5. Oh.
Yeah, and I want to say
I put my queen on H6. Yeah, you didn't move her away.
Yeah.
Rooks to C7 is going to be...
And a very cute line here, queen G7, I go knight E7. You think you're okay, but you're not.
Knight G6.
And then knight takes G6.
Sweet.
Ooh, you woke up today playing Puzzle Rush?
Those are obviously just speculative lines I'm demonstrating because they're cute, but they do show just how difficult it is to play when you have a full queen worth of pieces not doing anything at all.
By the way, we should go back to Nepo's game.
Please,
Anish has a great position.
Nepo, when we left,
he did play B3 and Rook C1.
And now Fabi is just trying to figure out how to finish this. I think Jan playing these moves quickly and not even thinking about things very much is an indication he kind of wants this done. But he's not going to, suffer through it for another 2 hours.
Inside, he must be absolutely in agony, thinking about his tournament, the opportunities he had. He was at one time in first place. He had played the game of the tournament, as Peter has described it, maybe the game of the tour. And what a fall from grace. Here he is. He got his preparation in, mixed up a move. He didn't play knight b3, he played g4. And with an hour and 57 minutes on his clock, he was lost out of the opening. And
Fabi is doing it very cleanly because Fabi's last move is queen takes a3. Picking up an additional pawn, allowing knight b5. You can play knight b5. Actually, you don't lose to anything with checks yet. But black just goes queen b4.
What a beautiful exchange sacrifice.
And says, I will take on b3 next move. With something.
But what a beautiful exchange. I mean, I'm playing rook takes c3 for positional compensation half the time. Here, I've already got 2 pawns in the pocket. You didn't mention A5, A4. It's not. There's no.
It's not necessary because bishop takes B3 is unstoppable. We're
Right.
just winning faster. A5, A4 also wins, but we don't need it.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine after rook to D1.
Bishop B3.
Agreed. Yeah. And we will play. Well, it's not
in order to protect your queen on D2, you've taken away the D1 square from the king, so you can no longer play king C2. And here, if all else fails, I will play rook A3 check, take on A2, and take on E4. And
correct.
I have quite a number of runners here.
By the way, this dragon pawn structure, with the G5 pawn missing, there was a player from England, Jonathan Mistel, international master Jonathan Mistel, and he would explain to me, yes, sir, in the dragon you sacrifice your rook for 4 pawns. Mm-hmm. And it's like a rook versus 5. You know? And he would explain that dragon players were interested in this ending. And the crazy part was I think it was a U.S. Women's Championship, it was Alice Lee and Arena Crush got into a position where it was king and rook versus rook and 4.
I remember that, yes. It's so hard to evaluate and who's playing for a win.
Right, exactly. It was hilarious.
Jan's gone H2, H4, but now the issue is we can go for, I think the cleanest is just go rook H5. Yeah.
The rook left, rook's fair.
Yeah, and then...
Which both rooks are good, right?
Yeah, but why not keep the one on C3 on C3?
Yeah. Because it'd be hanging, but he can't take it anyways. Yeah.
But you also mentioned, Peter, there was bishop D7, E5.
Yeah, but you don't want to allow H5, Hg. You would like to end the game before H5, Hg happens on the board, right? It probably loses, but why allow it?
Fair. No bishop B3 sacrifices immediately. We like the rover very, very much. In fact, rook C5 just looks like...
It forces the rook on C1 to go somewhere because you need to be able to take on C3 if rook A5 happens. So you need the C1.
rook E1, let's say?
Rooks,
somewhere.
Which is a square.
E1,
okay.
Yeah, and now
rook C2.
In some cases, rook C2 will win.
I think it's
probably here it does win because I have bishop G4 check in the end.
Here, queen B3.
Queen B3, king C1, queen A3. King D1, bishop G4 check, and then something. After rook E2, something.
Why don't I have a pawn on F3?
Yes, yes, that is a very valid thing to ask yourself. Yeah. So I guess in order to stop that variation, you go rook C5, rook CG1, but something must win by force. Then.
Rook CG1. This is one of those, I mean, it's such a painful accident. Yeah. You just avert your eyes. You rubberneck the traffic, like, oh.
Yeah, I guess we still do the same, actually. We have bishop B3 in the end.
Is it?
Rook C2, queen B3, queen A3. You have to go to D1 because otherwise I play queen A2, queen A1 mate, which is kind of cute.
By the way, let me just put that on the board because it is
nice mate.
It is a pretty mate.
Mm-hmm. So you go king D1, and the simplest, I think, is just to play bishop B3 and collect everything, right?
So you want to play bishop b3, collect everything, and yeesh.
Yeah, none of these things are.
This is, and we see Jan there at the camera. He's just looking away. His position's a train wreck. He knows that he's absolutely dead stone cold busted, and he's thinking about.
I don't know.
A menu? What's on the dinner? I mean, is there a good movie? I remember during the Cairns Cup, Valentina, she came and she won the Cairns Cup, and we were asking what she was doing during the evening. She was watching horror movies, like it was inspiring her. I think this is one horror movie too many, though, Peter. This is not nice. I mean, we're having at Jan's expense, but
this is not enjoyable to watch.
We have been there, and Jan is just again.
I think he's
suffering his way through.
Maybe done with this.
I think he might resign soon. Yes.
Excuse me, but this is a huge result for Fabi.
Yeah.
Fabi has not had a great Sinquefield Cup. In fact, we might say he's very, very fortunate to be at 50%. But nonetheless, he's there. Nonetheless, he's in I want to say race, that's maybe too strong, but he is pushing Ali Reza. Ali Reza can't afford to slip. Fabi wins today, boom, 3.5 points. Ali Reza loses today, and suddenly that GCT and the percentages of who wins the GCT tour.
Alireza will still be a massive favorite.
Of course.
But they will come a lot closer. Yeah.
A lot closer.
And Alireza is just...
Very interested, Alireza.
Yeah, he's gone rook cf1, and now it allows everything. It allows both rook c2. And honestly, bishop takes b3 is probably even simpler. Let's show this one as well. Bishop b3.
Bishop b3.
Cb, rook takes b3.
Okay. Rook
Knight b3, queen b3.
Queen b2.
Queen b2, queen d3. And then rook a5 check.
It's just not even winning the queen, it's checkmate.
It's actually checkmate, yeah. Because king a1, rook a5, queen a2, I go queen c3, right?
Yep.
And then rook b5. Yeah, bishop b3 played, yeah, you resign here. Yep.
And he resigns, and that's
you resign here.
Quick win for Fabi.
And
it's kind of clear that Nepo just confused the move order.
Yeah,
he had to start with knight b3.
Well, queen d3 was confusing to us. Later it made perfect sense. I mean, the preparation was actually world class until you don't play knight b3.
Yeah.
Peter,
yeah.
I mean...
It was a very, very interesting niche idea against somebody... I mean, he couldn't have expected this from Fabi, so this has been in the locker for somebody for years, I would maybe even imagine.
Right.
And then to do this to your interesting new idea is, yeah.
Let me just, for those of you who are coming and joining us, let me just point out, once again, a huge impact that we've just had in the game between Jan and Fabi. We're looking at a position that you would imagine comes from a Yugoslav attack variation, and you would think to yourself, wait a minute, something's a little wrong. And if you saw this position for the first time, you would be right. In fact, Black has an extra move. He's in a Yugoslav attack. The extra move that he's done is queen a5. The reason is because earlier in the game, the queen did not go to d2. It first went to d3, encouraged knight e5, and then the queen dropped back to d2. You might think to yourself, well, Jan blew it. Mm-hmm. Like he just blew the whole game. But his preparation had been to play knight b3, queen goes back to d8, g2, g4, and away you go. The problem is that you would like to keep the queen developed, except there's a trick.
I think you start with e5.
Pardon me, e5 first. That is
nice
exactly
trick.
Right. And then we do have this move knight to c5, which is why you can't go with the queen to a6. So what Jan did first, however, is he started with the move g4. And that was a blunder because now there's no
e5. Bishop's moved.
Yeah. The bishop's moved, and suddenly the queen actually is incredibly well placed on the board. Why? Because after the blunder g5.
Two moves later, the game is effectively over.
The queen on a6 is hitting a2, and boom, game over. What a turnaround, though. Oh, painful. Sorry.
I'm sure Fabi couldn't possibly expect this.
But what a gift.
Oh, yes.
And he will take it. Where would you like to guide us?
Let's go to Gukash's game against MVL, because bishop a6 did happen. He snapped the pawn.
Yeah,
he did.
MVL responded really, really quickly, and it feels like he saw it coming, and he kind of settled on the response. The engine doesn't really approve of that response very much. The engine says, we can do the very interesting queen sacrifice, which I think is very difficult to assess during the game. I think nobody gets blamed for not seeing this as good.
Right.
But in terms of not accepting it, it suggests bishop f8 may have been the strongest option if the bishop gets dropped to d3. Although, once again, the machine starts playing slowly and it says that the bishop on g7 is stronger than it is on e7, but why that would cost the pawn and be enough is very unclear to me. So, honestly, I kind of understand this reaction. We have extinguished the pin on the d file, now the bishop is hanging, it drops back to d3, and we use this pin on the knight on g3. But unfortunately for MVL, after a very logical move, queen e1, e3, you are now just basically a healthy pawn down. You can continue pinning the white knights, but this creates no threats. We can spend the tempo on stabilizing on the other side of the board, and then eventually we will unpin our pieces. There is some compensation because of how awkward this group of pieces currently is, but we gave up a full pawn for it.
Right.
So yeah, as black, we're not very happy here anymore.
Exactly. Bishop h4 on the board. So bishop takes a6. That was a daylight robbery. He just captured that pawn in broad daylight.
Yeah, that would be a good, these sometimes in chess composition, there's those retro-analysis type studies.
how did we get here?
Yeah, that would be a good position to give to a student and say, please deduce where the a pawn went. Because this looks absolutely normal with the exception of the a6 pawn not being on the board somehow.
How did it disappear? But let's update our standings now that Fabi has won and Prague drew earlier.
Right, we already have 2 results. It's still early in the round, but currently Fabi is sharing first with Ali Reza, and we actually have him with Christian ready for the interview.
Fabi, an unexpected early result for you, but definitely a welcomed one by you. Let's start with the opening. Big surprise at move 2, g6. How did you come up with this idea and what was the strategy? Were you looking for a fight in this one?
I think I was just like looking at Noterbeck a few days ago, and he sometimes plays g6, and I thought, okay, why not? But then when Jan played knight c3, I realized that probably he prepared this for Hikaru and the candidates because
he was playing fast.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. But he went for the most aggressive line, which is a bit unpleasant to face because he played in the faster Marazzi where we get just a game. Or he played like c3, which is also very positional. But then he went for the most aggressive line, and then I thought, yeah, he probably prepared this for Hikaru and the candidates because Hikaru was playing this stuff against Gukash. And then he played him after in the candidates, so he was definitely looking at it. And I started to regret the opening choice. And then especially when I realized that what I prepared was Hikaru's line, Queen A5. And Queen D3, I just didn't know this move, which of course is a bit silly to go for the accelerated dragon and then not know anything about, to have any detail that you missed is so dangerous. I played like natural moves. We probably got to some theory. And after the game, he was saying knight b3 is kind of very dangerous for black, so maybe he mixed something up with the idea that now Queen A6, E5. If I take, then there's knight c5, winning material. Mm-hmm. So I might have to play queen c7, and then it's kind of a better version because I don't get my queen to a6.
Yes.
So this was some subtlety. Yeah, here I spent a lot of time because there was, first of all, there were positions like knight e8 or knight h5, and then I thought white has a pleasant endgame. And then there were also very sharp things like b5, and I wasn't sure, like g5. I mean, he can also take a pawn. But like this kind of chaos, this kind of stuff was a bit chaotic, so I couldn't figure it out entirely. But he can also take a pawn, and I couldn't figure out these positions like queen a6, knight c3, and knight on b3, it's very solid, so I didn't really feel comfortable giving up the pawn like this.
But he was still absolutely blitzing out his moves, not spending any time.
But I think that he was bluffing a bit because it's sort of
You think
style.
it was a bluff?
I think so. To play very quickly to put pressure, but sometimes he is semi-bluffing. So bishop e6 I liked because it looks very safe. Like now after g5, knight d. Or I also have rook c3, but like in worst case knight d7, and it's very solid. Like he's not getting knight d5 anymore. So I'm kind of just stopping knight d5, and this structure is well known to be quite decent for black because he no longer gets the d5 square. So he went for this. It looked logical, but now my queen goes here. And maybe he could play like g5 first and then bishop d4, but yeah, it doesn't look like it's the right way to play the dragon. Mm-hmm. Like normally you're not supposed to play g5, you're supposed to play h4. So.
Right.
And then he blundered here.
I saw you guys obviously chatting after the game. Did you guys discuss this moment, g5?
Well, there's nothing to discuss. Like he missed knight e4, it's clear. And when I played rook c8, I understood knight e4 as a threat. So after he played g5, I just didn't understand. But I spent probably like 20 minutes because he's playing instantly. So it's possible that he prepared it or something, and I should understand if I'm losing. But
was there at any point in your calculation, any moment that you almost spooked yourself out of taking on e4?
Not really. Like there was never a moment when, it's clearly the critical line is this, and here queen d5, and basically all I had. I was even thinking that this is probably a draw of some sort, but there's no reason to go for it because it's very important that I go queen b6, not queen e2. Queen e2 knight d4 is a problem. Rook b2 king a1. There's no more checks. But queen b6 now is threatening maiden 1, so he should defend it like b3. Otherwise, he trades queens. Queen b3. I'm up 2 pawns. b3 and here I thought either queen f2 or queen a6. And okay, again I threatened mate. Mm-hmm. And if b4 queen a3 and if a4 there's queen e2, and and I can always take on e6. So,
and what's the difference right now compared to
now
knight d4 before?
Now there's no queen defending a2.
Got
It's the same position, but there's a pawn on b3, so now this is made. So
that's quite nice. You don't take the pawn on b2. You force it to push to b3.
I mean, it's very, very simple calculation, but I looked at every individual move here to make sure. I looked at every queen move, and I even looked at this one, which is just a 2 pawns down queen ending. But obviously white cannot draw there. And then every single queen move, like queen d4, fe6, and then I was even thinking, like, what if maybe he tries h4, but the problem is his play is so slow, I can always, like, play queen c4, threaten the trade of queens. So, and then I started to think about other moves here, like b3, which is maybe the most solid move, but I even have bishop g4 followed by e5 stuff, so that looked very nice. And then finally a3, like, okay, this should be winning, very simple, but queen c4 is nice, it's the same idea, just an even more simple version, because now my queen takes on e6. And, the typical mates on a1.
Yes.
Or any position with like 2 rooks against queen. I mean, I win in any way I want. I can move my bishop, I can take, and then move my bishop to g4, c4, anywhere. So, I mean, I just like mop up his pawns. So, there was nothing even left to calculate, because now he's also dropping a3, c2, everything. So,
obviously, after the painful defeat against Ali Reza, the outlook for the Grand Chess Tour was not great for you. But right now, you're fully back into this tournament, +1. How did the outlook for you personally change as of right now?
Okay, you see my luck. I mean, I won this game from the opening somehow. I drew Ding from a bad position. I beat Noterbeck from nearly losing position. So after the first round, everything that could have gone my way went my way. And I'm thinking about the Grand Chess Tour, but more so, like, the tournament is very relevant for me for the FIDE circuit. So it's not just about like winning necessarily, but also any plus score is already pretty good for the FIDE circuit, and some chances to get up in the ranks there.
Well, great execution today, Fabi. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks. Guys, back to you.
Thank you, Christian. Our congratulations, Fabi. We started the broadcast by saying how difficult it was to win. And Fabi showed how easy chess is. It's easy to win.
Moon, yes.
Yeah. How are we doing? Are we ready for a break, Nasia?
Yes, I think we are. And as we go to break, Anastasia sat down for a one-on-one with Frenchman MVL. So take a listen, and we'll be right back.
Maxime, welcome back to St. Louis. I know how sportive you are, you like jogging, and I was wondering that now that you like to do it in the park near to the Chase Hotel, did you already learn all the routes, or you still discover some new ways, or you checked everything already?
No, I didn't check everything. This is a pretty big park, and like especially during tournaments, I don't like to have overlong runs. That would spoil too much energy out of my chess. But yeah, I enjoyed the forest park. I feel like I always like to connect with nature, like especially as I live in Paris, it's not so easy. So when there's an opportunity, it's always good. Yeah, I use the mornings to do that, and it helps me keep energy as well, and spirits.
Of course, and I asked this question also because you're coming here, I don't know for how many times. I mean, how many times did you participate in the Sinquefield Cup?
I missed the first one, and then I've played all of them. So from 2014 to now 2024. If you remove 2020, so that's 10.
It's a 10th one, like an anniversary, yes. So looking forward to it, and what are your goals in this one?
Oh, I mean, I always want to play well, and especially now that I feel like I've gained back some groove in my chess. I mean, in Rapid and Blitz, I always had some groove, but in Classical, I feel like my redemption days may be over. So, hopefully I can play well and fight for the top place.
Yeah, but it seems like in classical chess it's so hard to win or lose any game, like judging from the previous event you had in Romania. Like what happened there, and how do you estimate your play in Romania?
Yeah, in Romania I had 9 draws, but I feel like it was a lot different to other events where I had so many draws, because simply I was never in any danger and I was putting pressure on in many games and probably missed a couple wins. So for sure, like I feel like I should have won at least 2 games in Romania, possibly even more. It's of course a bit frustrating, but it gives me spirits and high hopes for this Sinquefield Cup. Of course, I might crash and burn, but we'll try to avoid that.
And I started this interview with about sport and jogging, and now that I know that you live, of course, in France, and we had the Olympic Games there. Did you take an advantage of that fact, and did you visit some events there?
I didn't have that many opportunities to visit events. I mean, I would have loved to, but I was going on vacations with my family, and then like I came back to Paris for like one evening and then flight immediately to St. Louis. I mean, I was following every day, like probably not every medal that France got, but certainly a lot of them. Like I was watching TV probably 4 to 5 hours a day at the very least.
How do you feel about the fact that chess is not included in Olympic Games, and what do you think? Will it happen any time in the future?
I mean, it probably would be great for chess, of course, to be included, but at the same time, like I heard Magnus share his opinion on this subject, and I actually have the same opinion that in general, I mean, it's great, and like it's great to see such a mix of different sports, but probably coming back to the origins of the Olympics. So like, of course, some team events, but mostly focus on strength events. So like that's athletics, that's cycling, that's swimming, of course, that's rowing, that's martial arts, for instance, and like going back to the true spirit of the Olympics, like, and probably add a couple more, like for instance, fencing, archery, like it has its place, and against some. But for instance, I would remove football, I would remove tennis probably from the Olympics. But, you know, lucky for them, I'm not in charge.
Actually, speaking about Olympics, we have our own Olympiad in chess, and you are playing for the French team. What does it mean for you to participate in this year in Budapest? Actually, the Olympiad will start just 10 days after Sinquefield Cup. How are you going to recover?
Yeah, I'm really ecstatic. Like, we're gonna actually have a training camp right before the Olympiad. With the French team, and of course it's a pity USA is not playing, but at the same time we still have a very competitive team, and probably going for gold is not going to be so easy, but we never won a medal in Olympiads, so definitely this would be something to look forward to.
How many Olympiads have you played? I just was thinking.
I think it will be my 8th Olympiad, but I'm not completely sure. Yeah, because I've played non-stop from 2006 to 2018, so that's 7.
That's very impressive, of course. I mean, 8 Olympiads in 16 years, right, in a row. So, wow. Yeah, okay, so Sinquefield Cup is coming very, very soon. My last question, who am I looking forward to play against in this event?
In general, I am looking forward to play every one of the players, because, you know, they're the absolute gangsters in this world of chess. So you want to, I like the challenge. I like to fight my best against them and hopefully win some games.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Maxim, for your time, and all the best of luck.
Thank you.
In our game, we see echoes of warfare. Every bishop's silent shift. Every piece finds its place. The clocks are ticking, and every second matters. Legends will rise, and champions will fall. Give it everything you've got, and ask for more. This isn't just a game. This is it.
I'm Grandmaster Maurice Ashley. Join me on October 24th to 26th for the St. Louis Chess Conference to be held right here in the chess capital of America. Also featuring legendary world champion Garry Kasparov and Hall of Fame inductee Judith Polgar, the conference will explore the broader educational and social impact of chess. For more information, visit stlouischessconference.org and sign up today.
The St. Louis Chess Club is the premier chess facility in the United States. We bring the educational benefits of chess to thousands of students across the St. Louis area. We also promote chess at the highest levels, hosting all levels of the U.S. championships, as well as high-profile tournaments that attract the world's best players. Become a member and enjoy perks such as free classes and lectures, weekly tournaments, and so much more. Visit stlouischessclub.org to claim your membership today. The St. Louis Chess Club Scholastic Program brings the educational value of chess to kids in schools across the St. Louis area. Active in over 100 schools throughout the St. Louis city and county, the St. Louis Chess Club has been able to reach over 85,000 students in both in-school and after-school programs. We view chess as a valuable educational tool. Learn more about our scholastic programming by visiting stlouischessclub.org/education.
Welcome back, everyone. We're having a very exciting round 6. Already have 2 results.
Yes, we do.
And a very interesting game going on in Wesley's game, right?
Well, interesting is not the word I would use. Very important. Very important for the tournament standings. Very relevant to everything. But it's about to end because Alireza found the line that we were talking about and has equalized completely. Somewhat regrettably to us because we like predicting how the games end. After castles, knight takes c3, ba5, rook fc8, and rook fc1. Alireza chose not to play the very, very beautiful double pin idea with b7, b5, which does make an immediate draw. But what he did also makes an immediate draw, so why show off?
Right.
Knight e4, bishop d5, knight takes c5 is fine, but rook takes c5 is even faster, because if you take on c5, you maybe even start worrying a little bit with white if the pawn on a5 could actually fall if black manages to attack it. So I'm expecting something like rook, bishop b7, rook c1, rook c1, rook takes a5, and they'll find a way to repeat here, because honestly, it's not even a stretch that this is a draw. It is just a draw. Very nicely held game by Alireza. He controlled it quite well. Also, I have a feeling Grunfeld may have been a bit of a surprise for Wesley.
Right.
And in particular, this newfangled way of denying white free rolls in the opening instead of the old knight takes c3, which I think Wesley was expecting. The move bishop f5. If you don't know what you're doing there with white, not only do you have no advantage, you also probably don't even get a shot at advantage. So, nicely defended game by Alireza. He will remain in the lead on +2. Wesley is now joined by Fabi, who just beat Jan Nepomniachtchi, the game we spoke about, then Fabi spoke about in interview with Christian. And there's 2 games still running. Where do you want us to go?
Well, the game that really kind of shocked us was Anish Giri and Nurulbek, because we thought
Let's go there.
that Nurulbek was in trouble.
He still is, but his position improved somewhat, because after f4, Anish did make a move h2, h3, which kind of hints at an overcautious approach. He wants to prevent queen g4 from happening, I guess. But where is it going to happen is not very clear to me. I think it wastes a tempo. His position is so good that even giving black a full tempo here doesn't really reduce the advantage a great deal. Nurulbek played c7, c6. And here Anish played your favorite move with 2e3, which is still good. But something like rook b1, I think, was more on point, hinting at this idea that you played c6. Now I will say thank you, and I will include in my list of pressures an idea of opening the b file if it becomes advantageous to me. e3 is not bad, but it does allow black to do what Nurulbek has done, which is takes, and queen e7. And now black is basically one move away from more or less stabilizing with knight bd7. But Anish correctly says, okay, it's time for me to do something about all of these things, and goes takes, c5. Strictly the only move is dc. Important to note that d5,
f8.
Because of the f8 square, loses the pawn and the game more or less instantaneously. you would maybe like to play knight d7 to connect rooks, but after cd6, queen d6, knight e4, the ideas of knight g5 are so strong that the position... And queen takes d3 loses to... Queen e2 check is just one check.
Right.
It's important to recognize that this is just one check. And, okay, this is actually two checks, but now they run out. Now they run out. Sort of, yeah. But the point I keep on trying to get to is that this is not a check, this is mate. Yeah. And if this lands, it wins. So this is bad. DC has to be played. At first I thought, why not just knight takes e5? But after knight takes e5, knight d7, black suddenly feels quite okay because, we spent all this time softening our own king side. That black is now, the king on g2 is also no longer very safe. The way to continue after c5, dc5 is the move queen g5, which frankly stands to reason.
Right.
With the structure in the center that black has, the moment the queens come off the board, all of this collection of timber is going to get picked up, or at least white will legitimately attempt to pick it up. I don't know exactly how this loses, but maybe you don't even need to win this by force. It just looks ugly.
Weaknesses everywhere.
Yeah, it just looks really, really bad for black. Sometimes you hold these positions by defending for, 40 moves in a row very, very precisely, but it's no fun.
Good luck.
So you can see Norderberg does not look happy. After c5, and his position is just long-term bad.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, Wesley So and Ali Reza, going down those pathways you discussed, 4 versus 4, rook and bishop versus rook and knight.
Yeah, let's stay with this until the handshake. They will find a way to repeat something here.
I suspect they still have some work to do to get to the handshake. Let's continue to the other game that was...
Gukesh?
Yes, if you don't mind. Gukesh.
Yes. Gukesh is still up a pawn.
That was the MV earlier in the game. There was a bishop takes a6, pawn grub sighting. I was very proud
Approved
of
by
the players. Yes. Give them their pawn grubbers golden certificate.
And, a couple of decisions were made since bishop h4. Let's go back 2 moves. After bishop h4, we were saying queen e3 is very strong. Instead, Gukesh decided to stabilize in a different fashion by playing knight fe2, which looks a bit passive. Right?
I so much preferred queen e3.
And in the break, Dariush came up to me and said, machine says d6, d5 now completely equalizes. Which I understand the reluctance maybe of MVL to do this, because the pawn on e4 is definitely one of the targets we're trying to play against, so why are we trading it away? But you open so many things if you get those 2 pawns off the board. d5, bishop takes d5, you start wanting to take on d3, your rook on c8 starts looking a lot happier.
Yes.
So this did look like a very, very solid option for black.
In the Sicilian.
Instead, he played knight c5.
Which also looks good, attacking e4.
Which also looks, pretty decent.
But white does have queen f2 here, right?
Queen f2 or queen d2 are
attacking
playable
f7.
moves,
This game ended in a draw.
I made a mistake. We could have waited for the handshake, because that was certainly not long coming. When we left it, we just saw the rook retreating to the c7 square, and I suppose the 2 players found a way of making a repetition.
Quick repetition, yes.
And there it is. Look what we have missed, Nasi. This is terrible. We could have moved our hearts, minds, and souls if we had only witnessed the end there. For Ali Reza, I have to say, he couldn't have asked for better 6 rounds. I mean, in terms of results, he's gone through all of his black games. Remember, he had those
started with 2 blacks.
2 blacks, and the challenges that he had today. He was playing his closest rival in the tournament, Wesley So, with the black pieces. Easy draw. This has been magic.
We're 6 rounds in. I think his split is 4-2 actually.
On terms of blacks.
In terms of blacks and whites. So he's on +2 in the sole lead, has 2 whites and 1 black left.
Fantastic.
It's just a fantastic, fantastic spot to be in. His GCT, and this is something every round we get additional statage from Ben. And the thing that surprised me a great deal when I got the package in the morning today with the stats for the round was Alireza was still not above 90% to win the Grand Chess Tour. And with Fabi winning a game today, I'm guessing tomorrow he will not break the 90 either.
Right.
But with every passing day that he continues not losing games.
As we're seeing here in this current standings.
And there he is now leading Fabi by half a point and Wesley by half a point. And possibly one of the MVL Gukesh game. A winner in that game would also join those two players in a tie for second on +1 on 3.5 out of 6.
Right.
But with every good result Alireza has, his grip on the Grand Chess Tour proper, not the Sinquefield Cup. Sinquefield Cup is still wide open.
Right.
But the Grand Chess Tour proper, with his lead, and him just needing a good result here.
Tighter and tighter.
Yeah, he seems to be fully in control of that. And with 3 rounds to go, yeah, there you have it on your screen.
Right.
Once again, the calculation is the only one gapper, so to speak, that is more than a point. No, what I want to say is the only difference of more than 1 point is between first and second. So Fabi needs to win this tournament in order to have a proper shot, considering that Alireza is on +2, seemingly completely untroubled. Now that he's gone through those 2 positions, he could have and maybe even should have lost and didn't. So, Alireza seems very much on course to repeat his 2022, where he came to St. Louis an underdog and just conquered everything.
Exactly. The 3 weeks. He won the Rapid and Blitz, he won the Sinquefield Cup, he won the GCT Tour. It was a magical 3 weeks for Alireza, and that was why I chose him for this event. I saw the movie before.
Yes, we absolutely.
This is Alireza Part 2. We have 2 games remaining here in round 6. Early days for us. This has gone by very fast,
just
Nasi.
early draws. We even had a decisive result.
Exactly, right out of the opening. But in these 2 games that are being played, I see Anish still is having a very
they very
advantage.
quickly played all of the moves that we discussed, and Anish, as we described, is very much in control there after, let's say, knight c4.
Yeah.
And interesting developments in the game between Gukesh and MVL, which is sharper.
Maybe
a lot closer to equality, but sharper than the other one.
Right.
After knight c5, we were pointing out that both queen f2 and queen g2 are playable, keeping things sort of under control. Gukesh made the move knight c3, which is also understandable because you do want to protect the pawn on e4, you want to control d6, d5 breaks, which we were mentioning in the previous position. But it does allow black to play queen g5. You kind of have to play king h2, otherwise, like, knight c2 exists, but you're not happy.
Why did I do that?
You're not happy about it.
Right.
So you play king h2, and your dream is to play queen e3 next move, but this is playable. Which is honestly not a shock with the X-ray on the e file. I don't think it's surprising that this works.
What about bishop
Really?
C?
Bishop e3?
Bishop e3, we can actually just cash this in some order. And now we can even throw in this. And the cleanest solution here is also to try to get the knights off.
Nice.
Considering the fact that this is pinned, the bishop on e3 is unprotected, what we do by playing knight a4 is we deny white potential advantages after, let's say, this position. This position I can imagine not being entirely equal if, let's say, the rook lands on d7.
Fair.
So you do not want to have to make a draw in this position, which is why you go knight a4. The knights do have to come off. White is not going to give up on b2. And once the knights do come off, you will also start collecting in the center. And after bishop b3, you can do it in the other order as well. Start with this because e1 was hanging, and now cash all of this in. Yeah. Other options exist for black here, but at least on my screen, proper counterplay for MVL is pretty much always connected now with this move of 7 f5, which is not the most natural way to break in the center. You generally try to keep the pawns in front of your king safe, but if you do give white a couple of tempi here to stabilize, you're just not going to have enough for the pawn. For instance, something logical like knight e6, I can play bishop b3, and then bishop b3 is such an odd move, right? We're stopping queen g5, but how are we unpinning ourselves? But I'm guessing the larger point the move like bishop b3 is making is that since I ruled out queen g5, there is no way for black to increase the pressure against my pinned knight on g3. I can maybe even afford to go king h2, bishop queen d2.
Right.
You can play slower now.
But for me, Peter, the moves knight f4 to e2 to c3
Strange, right?
are strange. I mean, queen e3 is
this
so
looked like
obvious.
such a logical option, yeah. Okay.
And the knight on f4, okay, I'm not saying I'm going to play knight takes g6 on my next move, or even knight to d5 on my next move. It's about getting out of the pin.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what he disliked about this, because honestly, like, optically, this just doesn't look right.
Right.
So you have to have a reason to play, not to play queen e3. and I'm struggling to come up with anything here that would threaten the setup.
I was hoping you were going to tell me
No.
why the most obvious move, Queen E3, wasn't played. But we reached that point in our broadcast where we've invited our audience to stump the masters, and of course I'm talking about ourselves, our broadcasters, Christian included. What do we have? This is from Sean.
The question is, we know Yasser likes to tell a story. In 10 years, what stories will Yasser tell about this era of chess?
Era of chess. Well, there will be those young children in the audience, and I will say, you know, there used to be a moment. There was a tournament played in St. Louis. It was the Sinquefield Cup, and people used to think they could cheat. All the children, how do you cheat at chess? We don't. That's the story.
Okay. So it's
10 years from now.
Fairy tale time.
What stories of this generation?
I was not named.
No.
This question was for you, yes.
Okay, that was it. Come on, stump the masters. Don't stump me.
I'm not.
Yeah. By the way, there was one story I didn't get a chance to tell about the weirdest thing that happened to me in the chess world.
You remembered more weird stories?
Like this was a classic. So my best friend, Dr. David Leo Stefrak. Leo came from a family, and some of his brothers were born deaf. So Leo's first language when he grew up was sign. And he was very, very good at it. And one of his deaf brothers had come to me and said, yes, sir, could you play a chess simultaneous for the Deaf Association of Washington State, and we could do a fundraiser? I said, delighted, let's do it. So I was going to do a simultaneous. So all of the deaf people who played chess from the barbaric Northwest, the British Columbia, Washington State, Idaho, Oregon, all signed up for this simultaneous. And we had gone to the Swedish Center, beautiful, beautiful community building in Seattle, to do the simultaneous. So there I was explaining the rules of the simultaneous. Please, everybody, only make your moves when I stand directly in front of you. Don't make your moves when I'm away, because I don't know if you've made a move or not.
Standard simul rules.
Exactly. And if you want to take a pass, you're welcome to take a pass, and all of these standard things. And then this one question was asked, and it went like this. Dear Mr. Sarawan, and the person taught, how will I know when you stand in front of me? And I realized this was a man who was blind, deaf, and mute. So I said, I'll kick you. I said, oh, that will work out fine.
Did you actually?
Right. And he had his little braille board, and he did the whole thing. It was great. So 30 minutes into the simul, everything was going great. Everybody was happy, newspapers everywhere. And then they pulled this wall divider. This big, big open convention floor suddenly became half the size. Well, who knew it? But on the other side of the wall, I'm not joking, you can't make this stuff up, it was bagpipe night. Amateur bagpipe night. Now, bagpipes for 5 minutes is basically my tolerance level. This was way beyond anything you could imagine. Within 30 minutes, these bagpipes were driving me insanely crazy. So I just shouted out, could somebody please shut them up? And everybody in the room was deaf.
You were the only one.
I was the only one. It was a very strange feeling. I don't know, but amateur bagpipe night was... My mom had left. Everybody had left. They said 3 minutes of bagpipe was enough. Peter?
I'm not beating it. I'm not beating any of that.
That was just too weird for us. Even when they're professionally done, it's a challenge to get behind bagpipes.
Yes.
Tell us about our current position, Anish Giri versus Nodebek.
Sure.
How bad is we? Think it's bad, Peter.
It is pretty unpleasant, yeah.
Right.
And it's one of those which maybe with absolutely precise play you hold. And absolutely precise play seems to be starting by taking. You kind of need to stop. The threat here is, let's say I make a bad move. I think g4 followed by rook f7 kind of wins on the spot. Maybe rook f7 first is even stronger. So this needs to be stopped. The way to stop it is to play h6 so that...
But you drive us to a beautiful square.
And then you go something like c4, d takes c4, rook b8. And you hope that this somehow survives?
Yeah.
But we have an interview, so let's switch to that.
We have Christian with Wesley So.
Wesley, an important game for you against the tournament leader Ali Reza, also for the standings in the GCT. You seemed surprised when he played g6. Was that the case?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I thought he only needed the draw, obviously, in the tournament, so I thought g6 was... I just didn't expect g6 at all. I didn't prepare. Like, also, he'd been playing, I think, in his last pretty much 30 games or something in Blitz online, also online. He'd been playing e6.
e6.
Yeah, so expecting
looking for some Nimzo.
Yes. Nimzo, Queen's Gambit, Decline, or Catalan. But, yeah, I was hoping he'd play the King's Indian.
Of course.
Like, I usually play g3 here on f3, but I decided to see if he was going to play the King's Indian, then... at least I could get a fight because he played it many times against me online. But then he played d5 quickly, and I just didn't expect it. And I didn't have very good results against the Grunfeld in history. So I decided to play a move I played 2 years ago, Bishop g5. So I've been playing this against Maxim.
Whenever you're surprised like that, what happens in the mind of a super grandmaster when you have so many options, right, against the Grunfeld? Do you try to pick one that you haven't played in a while to surprise back your opponent? What is the mindset? What is the train of thought?
If you get surprised, you try, at least me personally, I try to go to a position that I know very well, that I have some experience in the past, or have looked at recently, just any ideas that I've looked at recently, but mostly to get a position where I have some familiarity and hopefully more experience than him. Mm-hmm. Because he also played this against me in Norway, was it last year? And then I played the Rook B1 Grunfeld there.
Okay.
But I didn't really get much, and I haven't looked at it for a while. So... yeah, I decided to go for this because I kind of like the arising positions after Bishop g5. But, I mean, if you want to play for win against the Grunfeld, maybe you have to play cd5, e4, and go for the critical line. I seem a bit surprised. I played this against Maxim 2 years ago, also online. I've been playing it.
What can you tell us about this position? What does white, what does black try to achieve in this type of structures? Give us a master class.
Probably. You know it probably much better than I do. But the thing is, first of all, Grischuk also played this against me 6 years ago. It's a very complex line. Like, black could take first. Like, castle, knight takes d5, c5, bishop c7, and then queen d7. Then there are some theory here with bishop e5, and then f6. And somehow the computer is giving black enough compensation, although it looks like white is doing well. Black has the bishop there, so I'm not sure why black plays castle. Like, they could just take in castle, for example, and then c5. Like, I'm not sure why they're giving white this extra option of taking with the knight, which is very concrete. Like, white also has some ideas here, like queen c2 or e3 or bishop e5, which I played against Grischuk.
Yes.
A long time ago.
But you decided to go for
I decided to play e3 because wasn't sure if Ali Reza was very familiar with those concrete lines. Like, black is fine according to the computer. But here I could take with the knight again. But the main line, knight c3 and queen d5. And black is only very slightly worse here. But
did he surprise you with this move, bishop f5?
No, Maxim played against me 2 years ago. Like, I'm just not sure why black wants to go for this when he could just take on d5. Like, white has many options here. I think queen b3 is very concrete. Yeah, or bishop e2. I think bishop d3 is also a move, right?
I'm sure there's a lot of ways.
I'm crazy. But bishop e5 is very quiet. Like, it goes for the endgame. directly. And I like the rising positions, and if black makes a mistake or two, then could get very pleasant. Like, I guess I'm just trying to close this long diagonal. And it's a move. There are many other more concrete options here. Just don't remember it too well. It's a bishop d3. Anyway, bishop e5, and then this is all fourth.
Exchanges came about, and we were trying to kind of figure out this endgame, whether you have anything or not. How did you feel about this endgame? Do you feel like you're...
Yeah, I thought white is supposed to be slightly better here. Because Maxim played against me cd4, right? Yeah, I think Maxim played cd4, then ed4. And then here white plays king d2 with the idea of bishop d3. And
try to shield the king behind the pawns, right?
Yeah.
Push the pawns in the center.
If I could get king d2 and then move the rook, like rook he1, bishop d3, white will have very pleasant position. Mm-hmm. Like obviously it's not much, but black makes a couple of courses, then the king is very well placed in the center.
Perhaps that's what he wanted to avoid also with knight d7.
Yeah, I thought cd4 was what the computer was giving, but after knight d7 couldn't remember that much. Knight d2. Thought bishop b5 was normal when he could take on d4.
Once again, we get this type of positions after he takes d4, perhaps.
Yeah, I thought white is supposed to be slightly better here, but couldn't remember what the best way. I mean, this is a weak engine, but
it is.
Recommending knight d2, so I'm not sure.
I wouldn't trust it too much.
Yeah, I thought it's supposed to be slightly better for white, but he spent a long time, like 45 minutes, after trading the queens.
Yes.
So they calculated all the way to the end, and there's not really much I could do.
Absolutely. Now, Wesley, we weren't able to talk after your game against Jan. Obviously, another bad game for Jan. What's happening? We saw you watching that game as well. What was your perspective from the playing hall? From there.
Well, I think Jan is still recovering from losing on time against me in Croatia. Right?
I haven't asked him that, but that could be the case.
we haven't talked since, but it just...
And we see Jan right now, unfortunately, suffering after that. Very unfortunate miss. G5, knight takes c4. That's a typical dragon tactic.
Yeah, for sure, but he was blitzing out his move.
He was.
Like
yes.
He played g5 in 30 seconds. And I didn't see knight e4 right away, but then when I saw it, just completely lost. I mean, when you have 2 hours for the entire game, and then he's making moves in half a minute. And when we got to that point, I think he barely spent 5 minutes on the clock. So, I'm not sure exactly what's bothering him. But also against me, he was blitzing out his moves.
Exactly. It feels like already 2 accidents in this tournament.
Like he was in a rush to leave. But the thing is, Ian is a very streaky player. So when he plays well, he can play really, really well. But also when he doesn't feel well, he can tumble, which is what's happening now. But that game was very weird. Like, I don't understand it at all one bit. Because...
You mean your game against
Ian's
him or
game
Ian's today? Yes.
Okay, my game against him, he could draw it in 10 different ways, but he kept blitzing out, and then he blitzed king f6, fortunately for... But today I couldn't understand the game, because like why did white play queen d3 in the opening? I never seen
I think that was part of his preparation.
Yeah, it's just... maybe it was, but I just don't understand the move. It looks so weird too, also. Like the line Fabi played queen a5.
Now I have to ask you also about the Grandchester. Obviously, we know you're fighting for that third position. Last one for the moment. But we've seen you in this tournament take some risks against Anish, against Pragnananda with that very sharp Joko Piano. Is that the strategy? Take more risks in this tournament?
Well, I'm just hoping to play well and try to qualify for next year, regardless of how I make it.
We see that it's a big battle between you, MVL, maybe even Prague.
And Gukesh too.
And Gukesh as well.
Yep, yes. I think Ian is done after the 2 losses.
Yes.
But, it's still very tough. And obviously we all would like to make it, but there are only very limited spots. And The thing is, like, I had one bad game in Romania
against Alireza.
Yeah, and that pretty much made it so hard too, because I got only 2.5 points from that event. Just one loss, just one bad game, and then, like, if I didn't have that one bad game, and let's say I scored 50% in Romania, like, I would have no problems qualifying for next year. But just one bad game and made the year so
tricky,
so difficult.
Tricky,
yeah,
absolutely tricky. Still remaining 3 games. We'll let you go, get your rest, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, Wesley. For sure. Very happy.
Guys, back to you.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you for joining as Wesley. And where would you like to take us? Because we've been watching
Let's check Gukesh's game. Yes.
And we're confused.
We can't understand this move.
Peter, we're confused.
A little bit, yeah. I pointed out the move knight e6, which if you really don't want to push f5, then perhaps the line with queen g5, king h2, like if you don't see f5 as a continuation, you're looking at this position is not that attractive because the queen will get kicked away with bishop e3. So MVL played knight e6, bishop e3, and there he played this really awkward-looking move knight g7, I guess hinting at knight h5. And it was enough to provoke Gukesh to play bishop e2, but as a matter of fact, now with the knight on g7, not jumping to, let's say, here you don't really want to play bishop f2 because you don't particularly want to allow knight f4, even though the engine, the engine says it's playable. But with the knight on g7, you do feel very confident playing bishop f2, I think.
Right.
And I think it was much stronger than bishop e2 for, once again, those same reasons that reappear pretty much in every position here. f7, f5 is the counterplay. And bishop on d3 actually is a very good piece here, supporting your center. So you just go knight g2 here.
That's right.
Your center continues holding, and also this knight gets rerouted to a very, very pleasant square on d4. And this is now a pretty serious advantage for white. Instead, bishop e2 was chosen. Once again, understandable. It seems like we've ruled everything out. Queen g5 is impossible, knight h5 is impossible. But what you've done by these moves is you finally forced MVL to make the move that needed to be made at some point. This is now on the board, and this is not that bad anymore because the pawn is hanging, you're still completely tied up. And the best two choices here, you can just give it up in order to be able to play queen g2, which, includes allowing this. And king h2, and the position is quite unclear. I suspect he might actually choose this because I think you hope that you will establish some sort of control. The bishop on 6 is passive because it's restricted by the pawn on e4, and maybe you hope that on d5. But after d6, d5, if this starts running down the board, you will regret this choice.
Right.
It's like white has 3 against 1 on the queen side. Black pawns are
already
stronger.
And your other
there,
choice,
right?
but the reason I think this might happen is his other choice is this.
Okay, it's not joyful, but...
Yeah, let's say we go bishop g5, white plays bishop d4, hoping to come out of the corner. We go bishop h4 back. If you go knight f2, you have to start calculating f3 or queen g5 first, so you probably don't go knight f2.
Queen d2.
Yeah, bishop f2 is a repetition. If you play queen g2, we go knight a6. I mean, this is decent compensation for the pawn, because this idiot is an idiot.
Yes.
I mean, we've stabilized, but we have a knight on each one.
And our idiot is still there.
MVL has a huge advantage on the clock as well. It's 1 hour against 24 minutes.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So this is now a very sharp game, and as I mentioned, Gukesh kind of forced MVL to find the correct plan. And now from here, I think MVL will be playing very confidently, because having finally settled on the idea of playing f7, f5, many of his moves will be logical and obvious, I would even say. Like you pretty much always drive the knight to h1 and you go from there.
Gleefully.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And elsewhere, this is bad. Bad for black.
Yeah, absolutely.
The question is how to proceed from here, because you can do it both quickly and slowly. You can definitely take on c6. Black goes h6, you go knight e4, rook takes d3, and you probably play king f2, I guess. And then you probably have to go for this position with black. But honestly, despite this being 3 against 3, like your initial feeling is this is probably more lost than a draw, right?
Oh, definitely.
Just looks horrible. The a-pawn is not going to run. You're lucky if your king side doesn't collapse immediately.
In white's position.
Like after h6, h5, which is what I missed originally, I still have to find a way in. So maybe, once again, maybe engine holds this, but it's just ugly, ugly, ugly. And the other way is just to play rook c3 and say, I will get the king over to e2, and then I will collect everything.
Exactly.
It's one of those situations. Knight f5, we can go king f2, we can go king f3. King f3 might be even stronger because a dream would be to play g4 and then put the king on e4.
Oh my.
Where it joins the attack against the black structure.
Right.
You can play rook f8, but there's actually no particularly strong discovered checks that are being threatened.
So I can challenge.
It goes like rook c5 now.
That's not that easy to do.
No, but it's not the only move. Like you can play g4 as well. The issue with g4 is that h6, knight e4, knight d6 check, king e2, knight takes e4, d4. And basically you would like to already have a rook on c5 in this position. This really is the only threat black can generate. Apart from forcing my knight to e4 and going knight d6 check, black has no counterplay. So we're just calmly improving our position because, as I said, like no discovered checks do anything yet until the knight gets to some other square.
Right.
And you don't have a good pass here as well. Like your passing moves here include a6 and h6, and that's about it. And we're expecting h6, and in terms of preparing for h6, it makes a huge difference that e5 is also hanging.
Gotcha.
This one probably is winning. The one with the rook on c3 maybe slightly less so. So yeah, stylistic choice here for Anish. Rook c6 trying to win the game on the spot, or rook c3 trying to keep things in control, under control for now. You still have to calculate a little bit, but Anish, maybe the best position he's had in this tournament.
Anish enjoying his position, but let's once again take a quick look at the standings as we've had some results.
Right, we've had 2 draws and 1 decisive game by Fabiano. Alireza drew his game against Wesley. Very important game.
Absolutely.
And Dinkleren and Prague, that was a pretty quick draw.
Absolutely. But these 2 players at the top, the leaders at the top, let's take a look at their road ahead. We know Alireza came in today with a very important game against his co-leader.
Someone who was closest to him.
Exactly.
Right? Tomorrow he'll be playing Dinkleren with the white pieces.
Ooh, up against the world champion.
Then Nepo, who's having a very rollercoaster tournament.
Who knows? Will the real Nepo step forward?
And the last round, he has white pieces against Prague.
Okay, and how about Fabi's road ahead?
Let's see, so Gukesh coming up with the white pieces.
Nice.
Then Prague, 2 youngsters from India. And in the last round, white pieces against Anish Giri.
In the context of this tournament, that looks like a potentially tasty game for Fabi to try and get something out of.
Exactly. I mean, everybody's murderer's row, if you will, but this looks like Fabi could make a move in the Sinquefield Cup, and we haven't talked about playoffs. We still won't talk about playoffs till it actually comes up. But I have to say, sorry, Peter, that I'm looking at this game of Gukesh and Maxime, and for the folks at home, you know, chess is a hard game, and if we're confounded by knight c5 to e6 to g7,
to g7 in particular,
knight f4 to e2 to c3. Yeah. You know, give yourself a break. I mean, chess is hard.
Short story time with Peter.
Yes.
My very first Olympiad was 1994 in Moscow, which I qualified for. I qualified to that by winning the Russian championship, which the Russian Chess Federation at the time made a mistake of writing it into the regulations that they will get the winner of the tournament onto the Olympic team. I wasn't qualified to play for the Olympic team yet, and in that tournament, Gary, who just in '93 beat Nigel in the World Championship match in London, got the white pieces in our match against England. And at some point in that game, it was a classical Scheveningen. Nigel actually got his knight. I can't remember which squares, probably e8. The knight got to g7. And Gary kind of gleefully described that game afterwards. Look at that fianchettoed knight. That's not very good. And he was very happy with how he dismantled it. So generally, you don't particularly want to put the knight on g7 in the Sicilian. But it seems to be doing things right now. And interestingly, Gukesh, from the 2 choices, which were very clearly defined, actually, Gukesh does choose to put his knight on h1.
Right.
Which knight is worse, h1 or g7?
I'd say h1, even though it does have hopes of coming out to f2 later on in the game.
Yeah.
The one on g7 will be on e6 at some point. It does have squares. Gukesh, he left himself 19 minutes as well.
Oh.
So he's on 19 minutes against an hour. in a position which is becoming progressively sharper.
Right.
So
results.
I think MVL is quite happy with how, considering that he probably missed bishop takes a6 from afar.
Right.
I think he should be quite satisfied with how the game progressed past that point. This is now a very unclear position in practical terms.
Exactly. Wow. Okay. Well, thank you for that, Peter. That insight. Gary at knight g7.
He was giggling a little bit. Yeah.
That's funny stuff. I remember Moscow in 1994 as an Olympiad, your first Olympiad, but that Olympiad was played literally in a facility where I only left it once. There was restaurants and there was everything in that facility.
And
captured you.
Some teams did not enjoy their experience of leaving the Cosmos Hotel. Yeah.
Right.
There were some stories
Cosmos. All right, we're ready for a break.
All these details from '94.
Oh, yeah, it was yesterday. It was absolutely yesterday. They were great fun. I have great stories from that Olympiad, by the way. Vasily Smyslov picked up my gold medal for me from the Kremlin. It was pretty good.
Wow.
You won the board?
I want to hear more about that.
What?
You won a board?
Yeah. Yeah. What do we have for break for the viewers?
I don't know if you have anything special, but we are going to be... actually, players were asked about the upcoming World Championship, so take a listen and we'll be right back.
I have very strong opinions about the matter.